Hello, Steve Rankin, the chaplain in the chaplain's office here at SMU, and we're continuing our video series, conversations with friends and colleagues on campus about justice, how we think about it and how we try to live it. So today we have Dr. Rebekah Miles from the Perkins School of Theology. She's the professor of ethics and practical theology and a friend. We've known each other for longer than I'm going to say.
Yeah, well, decades.
Decades? Yes,
Yeah.
we can say that. First question for you is, how did you get interested in the topic of justice, and what direction does your advocacy take? So a little bit about your background. What
Sure.
got you interested in it?
You know, I think, I bet for a lot of us, our own background as children. So for me, growing up in a Christian home, in a Methodist home, I know I heard a lot that Micah 6:8, what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. So, you know, I heard that a lot. And I think I saw my parents living it out. So I think before I really could put a definition to justice, I heard that, heard that text used a lot, and I saw it lived out. You know, when I was a kid, the big issues were, in small towns in southeast Arkansas, were race. And then, as I got a little older, issues around sexism and gender. So those were the issues that were, were big when I was a kid. And I recently found a letter from my dad to his brother, who was in England at the time. And I suppose my dad was in his 30s. This was maybe his second church as a pastor. There had been a number of racial incidents in the town, racism in the town, the little town. And the paper was going to have to put notices for the white churches and the black churches, so they just stopped putting any notices at all. And it was one of a whole series of, examples of racism in the community. And my dad wrote to his brother, and he said, I'm so mad about this. And I know if I were a black man, he said, I know I'd probably be in the Black Panthers. He said, because I'm so mad. And then he said, but I should be as mad white as I would be black. And I think to try to figure out ways that we can, try to have empathy with other people and what they're going through it for, in the way of actually seeing the real injustices they're experiencing. And also recognizing our limits. So he should be as mad white as he would be black. But he wasn't, and he was aware of that, and how do you push yourself? So I think I grew up with that. I think, the big issues today, and some that I've been dealing with are, LGBTQ issues, so issues around lesbian and gay, bisexual rights and transgender issues. So those are issues that have come up in my advocacy in the church, as you know, in the United Methodist Church. So yeah, and I could say more. I think a lot of the way justice plays out in many of our lives is just in ordinary, everyday encounters. So right. I do have issues that I advocate for, but also, my kids, a lot of their friends are transgender, lesbian, and gay, so they're in and out of the house, or used to be when they were still at home. And so that was also a way of doing justice, just in the way you treat your family members and your friends.
How do you define justice? Yeah. That's one thing we're asking all of our different interviewees. Yeah. So
this has changed somewhat over time, and I love that Cornell West, the Cornell West definition. Justice is what love looks like in public. And I think that's a sort of helpful way of getting at something that's going on there. I think really, though, that justice also has to do with our intimate relationships. So it's also justice is what love looks like in private, too. That you find those needs for building right relationships for in both private and public relationships. So, a classic definition of justice is giving each person his or her own due, right? So looking for what's the right relationship, what to do a person in terms of the goods in a society, or in terms of rights. We tend to see it more broadly than that in the Christian faith, and actually in Judaism and Islam too. That is, it's in part about living rightly in relation to God and in relation to all those others. And I think with a special obligation to care for and seek justice for those for whom justice is not automatically given in society, or who don't have the resources. So, poor, orphans, anybody who's dispossessed, immigrants, that there's a special obligation that we have as people of faith to more actively seek out justice on behalf of people who are dispossessed in some way. So Niebuhr has this great, quote, I think I can get close to it. Justice is sort of the approximation of love in conditions of sin. that is, given that we aren't going to be able to fully live according to what God has called us to in love with each other, that justice is an approximation of that that's a little more possible in human life. But once you start pushing that, I'm not sure that really active sort of public love is all that different from justice. So when Martin Luther King Jr. talks about active love that's seeking the good of the other in society and seeking the rights of the other, I mean, that's looking a lot like justice. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the third question and the kind of the takeaway question. To aim at justice in our society, what's the one point or principle or objective that we need to make sure to embrace and strive to enact?
Yeah, that's a tough question. So I was thinking about this, that Tolstoy story, The Three Questions. So I'm going to give you three things.
Yeah, okay.
But so what's the most important person, the person that you're with? What's the most important time now? And what's the most important thing? It's to be present to and help that person in front of you. And I think that's what justice is about. In the end, it's about being present in every moment to what God has placed before you, who God has placed before you, and how can you seek the good of that other person, the righteousness in your own life and for that person. And I think, I think for Christians and many other people of faith, we see that movement of trying to find the good in any given moment. We see that in our as covered by our relationship with God and empowered by our relationship with God. So when we're able to do that and seek the good of another person, seek justice for another person, we're also becoming more filled with the power of God in the world and learning to live more like as God would have us live in the world. So I think those are important pieces for me, and what that means is that justice can be the big issues, the big social issues of the day, or it can be the small things. So when my kids were little, when I was putting them to sleep, I used to recite scripture to them, and hymns and other things, poetry. But I recited that Micah 6:8 line. What does the Lord require of you? The justice, to love kindness, and walk humbly with your God. So I'm doing this over and over again. They're not going to sleep, of course. Probably not the best parenting technique. And our 3-year-old, she said, so I did this over and over. She says, Mom, what does the Lord require of you? And I said, well, to do justice and love kindness and to walk humbly with my God. And she says, Mom, what else does the Lord require of you? I said, I don't know. What else? She says, to cuddle with me and take me to the zoo. So, that's for me, I wouldn't ordinarily think of that as what doing justice would be about. But if you got a 3-year-old, to do justice for a 3-year-old is to give her what she needs. That is, that time and attention. So I think that doesn't mean that the big political, social issues of the day aren't important, and advocacy for those, that really is important. But it's important because of the way it impacts the real lives of people that we love and people that we should love, right? People that we should be angry on behalf of, people that we should care about as deeply as we care for our own children.
So I guess one measure of Christian perfection, to just go Wesleyan here for a second, would be when I love my neighbor as much as I love my own family. And in one sense, I know that there's a degree of unrealism about that. But there is a kind of measure of love beyond just the kind of affection we feel, to love a real commitment to the good of the other. That probably is a pretty good way of measuring whether or not I've been made perfect in love in this lifetime.
Right. And clearly I have not.
Nor have I.
But no, I think that's exactly right. And certainly we have certain responsibilities, like the responsibilities that we have to our children and to the people immediately around us that are really so important. But how these others are so important as well. And how do we have the same fierce advocacy for others that we have for those close to us? I think that's an important call of, for people of faith, the Christian life certainly, and a call for people who want to do justice.
Right. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I'm glad you could share with us.
It's always good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you
next
next time.
Thank you all. Appreciate you.